Welcome to Mainstream with Harpreet Singh Toor. आप सबनु प्यार भरी सत श्री अकाल, नमस्कार, आदाब and shalom. Today, Tuesday, June 27, we have primary elections going on for City Council, not for all 51 districts. It's about 32 because the other 19 there was no challenge. And yes, in one of the City Council, we do have our own candidate who happens to be a Sikh by the name of Sukhjinder Singh Nijjar / Sukhi Singh. And yes, we need to, and he's challenging Lynn Shulman. And you can see who I have endorsed on the social media. From there you will find out. And this is not the place where I should be mentioning who I endorsed. You probably can figure out that I endorse the person who is more dependent and the one who will deliver the services than somebody who will just talk about the services and not deliver anything except promoting himself. But important thing is that you go out and vote. That is very important. And also we had Indian Prime Minister Mr. Narendra Modi visiting United States. Most of the people, they had been watching or keeping track of it. And the interesting thing was that during his 9 years of being the Prime Minister of India, he has been to only the friendly places to give the interview. And this was the first time where he was up in front of the regular media, like American media. Excuse me. And one of the person, it was a female from Wall Street Journal, who asked a question about a democratic setup and the rights of the minorities. And the Prime Minister actually was not that convincing to give the answer, to be honest with you. But that is not the issue. The issue is after he left, she is being trolled by the members of parliament from Indian parliament and some of the, a lot of followers of Prime Minister Modi, and giving her, basically wrong, how should I put it down? It's like they are threatening her without really putting up the actual threats. And even the White House ended up giving a statement in defense of freedom of the press. And I always talked about this freedom of the press, that how important it is, the freedom of the press, because with the freedom of the press, you have the freedom of thought. And with the freedom of thought, that is what takes you to the moon and to the stars. But if you control and restrict, then you really start controlling your dreams. And when you start controlling your dreams, you cannot be an inventor, or you can adventure out, and you can't even dream of making up something which will be changing the whole humankind. When we live in the United States, we see a lot of inventions coming out from Europe and America. And right now China is also in line. Russia used to be at one point, but not anymore. Not to that point right now. So that's one thing which I am going to discuss a little bit as we go along, and as well as what happened in Russia. The Wagner Group, the chief of Wagner Group actually revolted, and now he is in Belarus. First it was like he has been excluded, that he will not get penalized. Then it came that no, he will get penalized. Then again it came that he will not get penalized. We don't know. Honestly, it is still all up in the air. But one thing is for sure, that whatever the boundary or the fort the President Putin had, it's not there anymore. And that actually gives an advantage to Ukraine, how much they will be willing and pushing to push to the boundary where Ukraine originally was before it got attacked by Russia, if I may say so, because Putin has his own terms. Western society have their own terms, but one thing is for sure, Russia was a signatory to protect the boundaries of Ukraine, and Russia is the one who actually breached that contract. So all that, those things are happening, and while that is happening, then we have our own issue here, the former President Donald Trump, and his conversations and the tape which came out. And when you really look at it, the issue basically was not about him taking the documents as much as what he did after taking the documents. And that's where he got into this whole mess where right now he's trying to get out. But there are a lot of things which are happening, but before we go further into the show, let me introduce to our guest who has been here before, and I can tell you that he will definitely be back here also. I don't know when, but he definitely will be, because time and time I do call him, because there are few things about American history and the way white super racists think, and how the things happen in Europe also, because his and his wife's family was affected during the World War II. So let me first say hi to him. Thanks, Charlie. Thanks for coming in.
Hello. Thank you for having me.
Well, you heard me. First, let me have your opinion on what you think about the visit of Prime Minister Modi.
Oh. Well, unfortunately, I was watching it and trying to absorb it. But as an American, we're not that familiar with Indian politics. So it's a little hard to decipher exactly. I did find out that he rarely speaks in public, in adversarial positions, and that there is a lot of tension between the Indian government and the U.S. government. And it seemed like, the U.S. government was trying to be very cordial and involved without delving into publicly any of the challenging issues regarding minority rights and other issues.
Keeping those issues under the rug.
I don't know if they were swept under the rug as maybe silent.
Uh-huh. Okay. Keeping it quiet, or keeping the conversation behind the closed doors instead of open in public.
Right.
Makes sense.
Yeah. But one of the things I read is a state dinner isn't a very common occurrence. So that they did this for Modi was very elaborate. Yeah,
it was very elaborate, no doubt about it. And I still remember, it was done for the former Prime Minister of India, Manmohan Singh, also by the then President Obama. And there is one thing, which I have discussed on the, my show before, that courting India by the United States, one of the reasons is their relations with the China. And India and China, they are always at each other's neck. And there is a substantial territory which actually China, moved into Indian territory, those line of control. And India has not been able to take it back, and nobody is talking about it. But that actually gives Americans to put in at least their foot under the circumstance, because between Taiwan and China, what's going on in case China decides to take over Taiwan, something like they did with Hong Kong. then America actually is looking that maybe they can use India, which I don't think India will ever go that far. You know, so next time when you come in, you better read on that. But you know, geopolitics is as being the geopolitics, which you definitely understand. That there are things happening worldwide, especially after Ukraine. What happened in Russia this week? How do you think that Putin is going to, you know, control whatever will be happening in the Russia right now?
That's a great question. It's a little hard to answer.
Keeping Russia
no,
as
but I also
one.
want to tie it into what you're saying about, I guess, is it the Kashmir region? And, you know, what happens in Taiwan. I mean, I think what's happening in Ukraine is very important because it's the first time in many years that the liberal governments have said we're taking a stand, and Ukraine has put themselves up and saying we're going to fight on your behalf, and
the rule draw a line. That line should
and I think
not be crossed.
that's part of the equation that is interrupting the assumptions that I think China, India, Russia have been making, that they think that, you know, they might have felt before this that the Western countries were not unified and wouldn't be able to organize a strong defense, and it might be interrupting their calculations about what to do. And how that relates to Russia right now is that, you know, first of all, Putin obviously overreached. And, you know, they've been absorbing an enormous amount of casualties and lost equipment. But he's tried to buffer people on the domestic side of Russia. But at a certain point, that doesn't fly, because I remember in Vietnam, everybody felt either the immediate loss of people that they knew, or the implied loss, you know, of being sent there, which people didn't really want. And I think that's what in Russia people are feeling. They have to be feeling that they don't necessarily want to go and fight in something that is a losing proposition. And all it does is weaken Putin, which is a good thing, but the bad thing is who would replace him if he is totally weakened? Because as bad as Putin is and has committed war crimes, you kind of get this. You get, you know, at least I get the sense that he knows what the rules are, even though he wants to break them. Whereas someone like Prigozhin doesn't care about the rules, and it's just a butcher. So if he were to be the person in charge,
we're talking about the head of the
Wagner group.
Wagner group, right?
Right.
Yeah.
But there are a couple questions that come to mind.
Well, before we go into the question, we have to take a break. Then we're going to be right back after the break with all those questions. And it's interesting that how that Wagner group, who actually is profiting from the mines in Africa by using the child labor, how it will affect and how Russia will affect with all this. We'll talk about right after the break. Welcome back to Mainstream with Harpreet Singh Toor. So the questions, let's go back to question. But before we do that, you can always contact us, send your questions, suggestions to hstour@gmail.com. That's my personal email, and I'll make sure that I get back to you. And if you have something, I will definitely talk about it. And if you want your name to be mentioned, that who said what, that will also be taken care of. So let's go back to where we were. Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, where would you like me to pick
Yeah,
up from?
you were having, a couple of questions. We were talking about
Oh.
Russia and
Oh, yeah.
where Putin stands now, and how this whole thing will weaken Russia and making China even stronger than what China was even 72 hours ago.
Well, here's the thing. One is, why did Prigozhin and the Wagner Group stop when they did on Saturday? What kind of deal did Prigozhin feel like he had to make and Putin had to offer? And the other question is, how long will it take before it looks like it's all falling apart now? So we don't know where Prigozhin is currently, and I wouldn't be surprised if he falls out of a window like the normal way that they have of dealing with problems.
Oh, it definitely will happen. It's a matter of time before it happens. Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
I also, it seems like it's just a matter of time for when Putin has a problem. That there may be some unknown source of an insurrection coming up. I mean, that's part of the thing with these incidents, is that they keep carrying on with other, once you start it, it carries on for a long, long time and things aren't resolved. I mean, domestically, there are still people who are fighting the Civil War.
Yeah, it is surprising, that he was talking about 1917 in 2023.
Right.
Whereas a lot of water has flown into, Moscow River, Thames, and Hudson River since then, and where we are now as compared to then.
But the same thing in 1917, Russia was in the war against Germany and Austria-Hungary, and their army was getting defeated, and they felt like they didn't have any support from the government, and they withdrew from the battlefield and started going back. And then there was domestic turmoil. They overthrew the monarchy. And then the first government that they had failed, and the Bolsheviks came in and took over. And now we have what we know, the USSR, and and now we have the current history. But to a lot of people, it felt like it was repeating again right now because of the failure on the battlefield in Ukraine and how the armies. I mean, the Wagner Group was the most effective military unit that the Russians have had, and now they're not on the battlefield.
Yeah, but if we really look at the way they fought, they were basically killing everybody left and right.
Right.
So if we really look at it, and like they say, history repeats itself, and chances, I don't know how it will play out, that if Putin feels that he's further cornered, how he will react, he may end up thinking of just destroying Ukraine totally by using nuclear weapons.
I don't know.
I don't know. A crazy person can go to any length.
It's true, but I think the threat is stronger than the actual doing. I don't think he would actually pull the trigger on that, because there are a lot of things that can go wrong towards him because of doing that. And also, I think if he were, from what I've read, is that if he were to use a tactical nuclear weapon, I think then globally the reaction would be more than, I think that's when they get a lot more intervention. I don't think China, who's his main benefactor right now, will be able to, will permit him to do that.
Well, that is true, no doubt about it. But then again, there is one more factor. Now you mentioned China, that how much leverage Modi probably have, if any, with the Russian situation right now. Because by buying the oil at a very cheap price, which is beneficial to India and their budget, the bottom line, indirectly the Indian government and Chinese, they are propping up Putin.
Right.
Okay? And how much influence they would have to bring him to a negotiating table and say that, okay, you know what, enough is enough, let us, for the time being, let the things calm down, hold a ceasefire, leave everything where it is on both sides, Ukraine as well as on Russian side, because till 72 or 96 hours ago, nobody thought about it. But now at least there is one thing which is, at least on the surface, that Russians could be in a weaker position and they may be willing to accept something.
Yeah, but it's a question of what the Ukrainians would want to accept in the battlefield. I don't think they would accept anything with like a ceasefire.
Well,
right now.
I know, but at the same time, that's where the Western countries' a role comes into play, where they are actually supplying all these armaments and everything to Ukraine. That they may say that, okay, you know what, Russia will stand where Russian border was. Whatever territory right now is disputed, where Russia is moved in and Ukrainians want to take it back, let us keep that as a,
but tactically,
with the peacekeeping forces, and then we will negotiate.
Tactically, that won't work, because what will ultimately happen is that'll give a chance for Russia to reorganize and reform their groups and take whatever military lessons that they've learned and adapt it. Ukraine would never accept that.
Well, right now,
because it'll give them a Russian advantage that they don't have right now.
Do you really think that they will be able to put the whole pieces together within the next 2-3 years and they will come back? I don't think so.
It's possible.
It is possible. Everything is possible, no doubt about it. With everything happening, but China goes into Taiwan, and U.S. is stretched, right? And China then starts supporting Russia.
Yeah, but it's also the Ukrainian people. I mean, they've been suffering a lot, and I don't think they want to accept.
No, I agree with you. I agree. I'm not declining that, but at the same time, I'm just hypothetically, I'm just for the sake of conversation, I'm saying, if the Putin stays, what would Putin accept? Even though Zelensky wants the whole Ukraine, no ifs and buts.
Right.
Okay.
What would Putin accept? I mean, obviously he'll accept anything. I don't think publicly right now he'll accept the fact that he's in a weak position and come off weak.
No, nobody. If we look at history, nobody really publicly accepts that defeat. Okay? Russia is not fully defeated yet.
That's why wars are fought to unconditional surrender. Because they realize, because the person you're fighting against won't accept it unless they're totally defeated.
Yeah. So, it's if you really look at that border, I was just reading about the Chinese foreign minister in Europe. He said that let everything go back to 1991 border, which means Ukraine as it was before Russia invaded, right?
Right.
If a foreign minister from China is saying that, what it means?
It means that China's position might be changing now and realizing that Russia is very weakened.
And they want to probably protect Russia as it is right now, instead of letting Russia get weaker and nuclear weapons that Russia has.
Russia's another client of China. I mean, they're on the par as all the African countries that China, or Latin American countries that China has influence now and tries to control. And don't forget, you have the BRICS organization, BRICS group, where they're trying to undermine the U.S. dollar.
Yeah, that is interesting that you brought it up. We're going to go for a break. After that, we definitely will talk about BRICS. And by the way, BRICS stands for Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa. That's what BRICS is. So we'll talk about it, that how they are trying to weaken the dollar, but can they really do it? We don't know. We'll discuss after the break. Welcome back to Mainstream with Harpreet Singh Toor. Once again, you can send your suggestions, your questions to hstoor@gmail.com, and we will be more than happy to get back to you. Continuing on that part of the Europe, Ukraine, Russia, and what is another interesting thing is all those countries, which were under the influence of Russia, they are part of NATO now, but somehow this president from Hungary, Orban, right?
Yeah.
He is still saying that Putin is still strong, that nothing wrong with him with all this thing. So what's going on? which is part of NATO?
Well, I mean, Turkey is also an issue, but I think that...
but Turkey is a majority Muslim, and the other, Hungary is majority
Yeah, but I'm just looking organizationally. Now, I'm only looking at this a little superficially. I mean, obviously, for domestic purposes in their particular countries, Erdogan and Orban want to come off as strong and maintaining their power. But I think they also like the protection that NATO provides them. And because of the organization, my perception of what the organization that NATO is, they have the flexibility to say things without having to be pulled in line, because you still have to have a consensus. I mean, right now, Sweden wants to join NATO, but Turkey is holding it up. So obviously there are concessions being made, and deals
of course there are conversations going on.
I'm
no
sure
doubt about it.
That's what's going on with Orban.
Yeah, no doubt about it. But geopolitically, again, when we were talking about India and United States, India and China, India and Russia, but we cannot ignore India and Pakistan. Okay? Because Afghanistan, India always had relations one way or the other with each government, doesn't matter. Even with the current government, Taliban, India has relations. And they are providing them the training and education and whatever it is. Okay? But on the other hand, with Pakistan, the issue is with Imran Khan being toppled, Pakistan has boiled into that situation, like, where nobody really knows what's going to happen. Okay? So America Pakistan and United States used to be really, really great allies. They stood with Pakistan since independence of India. But now they are coming to India because Pakistan is not what Pakistan was, and China actually is what was China to United States couple of years ago is not what it was, or what they thought. Because when they opened up China, one of the aim was to make somebody stand up against Russia at that time.
Right.
Okay, and Chinese were smart enough not only to provide what America needed, but logistically the way they planned the cities and everything, transportation and movement of the goods, the manufacturing capacity and everything. Now, slowly, as China became what China is today, especially what happened with Hong Kong, the Western countries started looking at the other side of China. Okay. Now they are moving to India. India will be a friend of the United States, but not the way U.S. thinks. Okay? So that's my way of looking at it. Now, from your side, how you look at it? I know it's not easy riddle to solve.
Well, my perception of it is that China has been gaining a lot more strength economically, but I think with the pandemic and the disruption of supply chain and the way they treated the pandemic in China has disrupted. They're not as strong economically as they were, but they don't want to admit to that fact. So they were trying to get a global presence with, I think it's the Silk Road, or I know I'm mispronouncing the name.
They are calling about,
but they're trying to create a global...
bridge and rail, blah, blah, something.
Right, they're trying to create a...
Rail and road, something.
They're trying to create a global presence so that they would exert influence the way comparable to the way the United States has, but in a different fashion, because they loaned the money to a country with the premise of building projects, but instead of the money being spent on local organizations, the Chinese demand that they hire Chinese companies. And then the Chinese companies and Chinese workers are there getting paid the money that China put up, and when the project is done, they leave. So the country that was given the money now has to pay China back without any of the other benefits of having gotten the money. So it's a little different approach than what the United States does. But the fact of also the other part of it is because of the supply chain problems that we've had from the pandemic, and with the change to Biden as president, he realized that the whole dynamic of relying on China so much to do the manufacturing had to be changing. And during the first 2 years of his administration, he's been able to pass the CHIPS Act, the other Inflation Reduction Act. So a lot of manufacturing is, and also is being brought back to the
continental United States,
which is working against Chinese interests. Now, I know I brought up BRICS before because there's a push by those countries to weaken the dollar and become more dominant. But one of the things that I've read is that China, as much as they want to push to become to replace the dollar, their currency is pegged to what the value of the dollar. So it may be hard for them to separate themselves.
It is interesting that now, originally it used to be gold. Then they had this basket of currencies, what India has, okay? And I'm pretty sure China also has something like that, where each currency is given some weightage, and that's how they do it. But dollar is an accepted mode of transaction worldwide because, give or take, dollar has more stability value-wise, okay? And I heard a lot about that. China is trying to push yuan as a currency. But then, between China and India will never want yuan to be the currency. So BRICS, the rest of the country, they can try. Right now, India is the population-wise also on the top.
I mean, we'll see what they do. I know that the push was to trade oil instead of in dollars into yuan.
But still,
and we'll see if that actually happens.
Would India accept that?
Right.
Because India is a big country which it is basically importing not only a lot of oil from Russia. China is also part of that. you know. So for me, when I look at it slightly different way how it will affect. So we right now we need to go for a break, and after the break, we will definitely, before we conclude, we will try to give you some theories which we have discussed. I don't know what would happen, but these are the theories, and I'm pretty sure all these brains, they are also thinking about their theories when we look at that right after the break. Welcome back to Mainstream with Harpreet Singh Toor. So this is something, you know, there are two things we are going to talk about in this closing section in the next few minutes. One, of course, the real quick, is there a possibility that the Wagner group backdoor somebody from Western countries reached out to the what was his name?
Prigozhin?
Prigozhin, yeah. That okay, if you revolt, then you will be able to, you know, be the ruler, and we will support. That is, listen, that's a theory.
You know, it's always a possibility, but you know, I'm not sure if they wanted to put Prigozhin in a position of handling nuclear weapons, because he's
crazy.
He's definitely a wild
He definitely
card.
is a crazy, yeah, and war crimes. Now coming to the current United States U.S. situation with President Donald Trump, you know, with all these tapes, and most of the people, they have already heard about it, and they talked about it, or they're talking about it, okay? McCarthy with Marjorie Taylor Greene and Boebert, and there is one more guy, they are saying that we are going to expunge that President Trump was impeached.
That's the least Stefanik. That's the congressman
What difference does it
from
make?
upstate New York.
What difference would it make?
It won't make any difference. You can't change the history book. You know, what are they going to do? Take every book and say, you know, let's say they vote for it. You know,
well, history books are being changed in India. Maybe they are dreaming that, okay, if it can be done in India,
I mean,
why we can't do it?
Because they'll say that the House of Representatives voted to eliminate the impeachment from the history books. The Senate will never vote for that, and the president will never sign it. So, first of all, it's never going to be anything other than what the House of Representatives did. And then, if they were talking about it historically, they'll say, well, the House of Representatives took a vote to remove the impeachment that President Trump had twice. And why was he impeached twice?
Yeah, you know,
so it's not like how to keep people from talking about it.
Yeah,
you know, when you're trying to put it in context.
Yeah, interestingly, when he was impeached twice, even though there were more than 50 senators who voted for impeaching him, but you need at least 66 in Senate.
Right.
Okay. And originally there was only one senator who went with the 50 Democrats.
The second time there were 7.
The second time there were 7, and some of them who actually voted not to impeach, they were saying he's not the president anymore, so why even to go with that?
But you know, the only time there's been four impeachments, you had Andrew Johnson, you had Bill Clinton, and you had Trump twice.
Yeah.
And the only one who ever got votes from his own party was Trump.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. That's right. That's right. Other question, okay? With all this thing happening, and Republican primary, okay? What do you think would happen with this Georgia case coming up, probably in August, end of July or August?
Something's going to happen, but we'll see what they actually do, right?
Because based on, you know, the Attorney General in Georgia, and from that county, they are looking at, those are really serious charges, including this one where they cannot find the Iran files.
Right. Well,
Like I said before, it is possible that Iran files were given to Ivanka, she gave it to Kushner, Kushner gave it to Saudi Arabia, and Iran and Saudi Arabia, they were like, okay, you know?
well, I think, well, first of all, I think, you know.
That's a probability.
Yeah, it absolutely is. And I think in Georgia, we're going to see what happens in August because we don't know. I mean, I expect her to indict Trump and other people. And, you know, she may even use the RICO charges for the state of Georgia. But I think Jack Smith, as a special prosecutor for the January 6th insurrection and also the documents now, I think he's going to come out with the January 6th indictments before that. And I think there's going to be a huge explosion. There's going to be many people caught in that net.
Is it possible that, because looking at the way Jack Smith works, okay, he has this, like they say, poker face. You don't know what he's thinking.
Right.
You don't know what he's going to say. Is there a possibility that some of the congressmen may also be tagged into this whole investigation?
That's what my thinking is, because there are a number of people whose phones have been taken. And I know there's a congressman who's the head of the Freedom Caucus, Scott Perry, who's from Pennsylvania. His phone they've been arguing in court, getting access to his phone. Now, that may have already happened. We don't know.
Mark Meadows, he already cooperated, and they are calling Rat Meadow.
Right, they have things from him. But I think one thing that happened significantly last week is that there's a guy named Alex Jones who has a very popular internet show that is key.
We are talking about this Alex Jones who never accepted Sandy Hook?
Right.
Okay.
Right.
Okay.
His assistant or associate just made a plea deal. And he has to turn over all his social media that he has. And he was in the room at the Willard Hotel that they called the War Room. And everybody was there. Everybody was taking phone calls. That, I think, will be very significant once that is all revealed.
And what about Steve Bannon?
He was in that room. Rudy Giuliani was in that room.
Rudy Giuliani is toasted already.
Mike Flynn was in that room. There are the other attorneys, Christina Bobb, Jenna Ellis. They were all in that room. They were getting phone calls.
What are the chances of Trump coming back again?
That's completely separate. I think that he has a certain amount of support.
There is something, which I want to make clear.
With 13 candidates running, it's winner take all. So if Trump has 30%, he's going to win.
Yeah, that is true. That is true. But my question here, we have only 1 minute left. Real quick. United States constitutions allow you to run to be for the president of United States, even if you are a criminal.
Right.
Right?
Right.
With that note, this is interesting. That's why this 2024 election is going to be even more interesting than what we have seen so far. So let us keep our fingers crossed. Stay tuned. Every Tuesday from 6 to 7 p.m. live. Feel free to email. And till next time, good night and good luck. This is crazy.
Did I do okay?